Hey everybody, welcome back to Cash Budget Insights, where I'm working on seeing if this whole cash budgeting thing really works. I'm personally tracking every dollar using a zero-based budget due to my daughter's chronic illness, as well as controlling some of that emotional impulse spending on the really hard days that we have. I would love to have you give this video a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. That is a free way to throw a little support my way and help this channel grow. If you haven't heard it today, I want you to know you're awesome, you're valuable, and you have a purpose. Now let's dive in. All right, so today I thought as a newbie, and while it's still fresh in my mind, I'm gonna give you 10 tips that really helped me when I was getting started setting up my cash budgeting system. Am I an expert? Absolutely not. Am I a newbie and a novice? Yes, I am. So I feel like my tips will hopefully be really practical if you are looking to see what this cash budgeting thing is all about. So before we get into all the fun stuff like the envelopes and all of that, I think there's one thing we have to do before that. You have to figure out what your income is. Your income is going to set the bar on everything. I mean, really, you just can't do anything without figuring out what your income is. And in addition to that, you have to figure out your expenses. Now, I have to tell you guys, this was, to me, the absolutely worst part of this whole entire process. So here's what I did. I took our bank statements, credit card statements, anything, anywhere that I was spending money, and I meticulously went through them. And I mean meticulously. I was looking for income. I was looking for where we spent our money. As I found transactions, I started grouping them together, right? So Walmart, I knew what I was buying at Walmart. It was either clothes or home things or groceries. So I started writing those into categories. There is just no shortcut for this part of the process. To be honest with you, it is really not fun, but you just have to do it. You have to know and really look at the numbers. You have to get down to the details of how you're spending your money. As I went through this particular process where I actually went through, I found so many things I didn't even know we were spending money on. You know, old subscriptions we had signed up for, things the kids had signed up for that they weren't using anymore. And I went through and I unsubscribed or canceled or asked for refunds on several different things that I didn't even know we were being charged for. As embarrassing as that is to admit, that's just where I was starting from. And I want to encourage you to take the time, set aside time to go through your transactions and see where you spend your money. As you're looking through your income and your expenses, so that would be my tip 1, right? Figure out your income. Tip 2, you got to look through your expenses. You have to categorize them. That is number 3. Categorize your expenses. Put them into groups of like items, right? So like out to eat. Like if you're spending a ton of money at Starbucks, maybe decide, okay, I need a separate envelope for Starbucks and then a separate out to eat envelope. Or maybe you need organic food versus food for the rest of your family, or gluten-free food for the rest of your family. You know, figure out how to separate your transactions so they make sense for you, your budget, your family, your needs. So we have our income, we figured out our expenses, and we're categorizing those expenses. That's number 3. So number 4 is determining your fixed versus fluctuating or variable expenses. Let me explain. So I am showing you our January plans, okay? So if you've already watched my January budget video, you've probably already seen this, but basically fixed expenses to me, the way I define them, are bills that come out of your checking account every single month. For us, you know, this might be like a gym membership, our mortgage, some health insurance, tithe, different utilities, pet things, or subscriptions like to Netflix or YouTube or anything like that. Those are going to be fixed expenses. So the dollar amount is generally the same, and there is a specific date tied to that specific bill. So that is, to me, what fixed expenses are. The next thing that I look at are my flexible expenses, variable expenses, whatever you want to call them. So I have these categorized. These are basically things that I carry in my wallet because I'm spending them more often. So groceries, gas, fun, miscellaneous, household, kids, out to eat. These are things that I personally want to set parameters for my spending. So that is where these flexible or variable spend. This is stuff that I typically spend every single month, but I want parameters put in place so I don't spend more than I should be. Okay, so that's what variable spending is. Now, once you've done those 2 steps, the next thing I would recommend is looking at like future planning, things that you know okay, I might not need clothing every month, but I know that I'm going to need clothing at some point. So I'd like to have X amount of dollars in that for when I need it. So decide from your budget how much you can allocate to these different like sinking funds or future planning, future bills that are going to come up, and make a plan based on your personal income, what you can put in these amounts. Now, these are things that you should have most of these categories when you go through step 2, which is listing your expenses. And then step 3, you're putting them into categories. And as you're putting them into categories, kind of keep this in mind of where you need to allocate those categories. Is it a bill? Is it something that doesn't come up every month, but you're going to have to spend money on, like a sinking fund or future plans? Or is it flexible expenses where these are things I need to live, groceries like gas, getting to my work, whatever your, categories are, these should be things that you're starting to pull out as you go through that expense step of your budget. And then I also have another one down here for holidays, but a lot of people just keep that the same as, future planning or sinking funds. All right, let's go to number 5. So number 5 to me is really important. Basically, it's time to set some financial goals. Set some short-term goals and then set some long-term goals. So it may be that you need to have an emergency fund, and it may be that you need to pay off X amount of debt. So write down what you want, because if you don't have a goal, it's really hard to stay on task. So have a goal, have a reason you're doing this, and put it down on paper. All right, number 6. So basically, when you have all of that information that we've talked about, you have your income, you have your expenses, you have categorized things, you know when your bills are due, which are your fixed bills. You also know those variable expenses, like where else are you spending your money, and have you made categories for that? Once you have all of that, it's time to put it down onto a budget. Now, your budget that you create, it should reflect, let me show you mine again. It should reflect those financial goals you set up as well. So step 6 is really just create your budget. Make it realistic. Here is my number 1 tip for you. Do not try to pinch pennies your first month. The first month you're doing cash envelopes, it's okay to buffer these envelopes a little bit more. Don't even worry about future planning right now. Just try to keep within your flexible expenses categories, your limits on those. And this can come later. I think just learning how to stay within parameters of a budget is enough for 1 month. And you can slowly add these other things as you get more confident in the process. To create a realistic budget, I highly recommend you add a miscellaneous envelope or category. That way, if you overspend on accident, of course, right? We don't do things on purpose. Sometimes things come up or we didn't plan for it, and we're still learning what those different things are we spend money on. I definitely, in my first month, I was creating categories because things were creeping up. I didn't have a kids category. I didn't have a household or a home goods category. So I had to create those as different things came up. So for my next month, I made sure to have those in there because I had to use my miscellaneous envelope several times to cover those expenses. So I highly recommend having a miscellaneous envelope when you're just getting started. So after you've created your budget, next you're going to want to figure out a system to track your spending. I personally highly recommend doing it on pen to paper, at least for your first month. I am not saying that you have to do that, indefinitely, but I think when you're just getting started, taking time to actually slow down and write down the different transactions helps your brain compute what is happening. Now, you can use Excel. There are online apps or different things like that you can do. For me, I'm personally tracking pen to paper. Down the road, I definitely want to get this all digital because I just feel like that is a better long-term solution for tracking. For now, I am doing pen to paper and I'm still changing my process so much that this has been really helpful for me. So figure out a way to track your spending, whether that is tracking right in your envelope with trackers that you can make online or tracking on sheets like this that do expense tracking or the envelopes, whatever is going to work for you. Track your expenses. Where is your money going? You have to know that to stay within the budget that you create. So I kind of already talked about this, but definitely you need to build an emergency fund. I think that should be like the first thing that everyone does. Emergency funds at one time for some reason, $1,000 was tied to that amount. I don't really know in today's day and age if that really makes sense anymore. I think having a higher amount or actually looking at what you need to live and having, a goal of like, okay, I want to have a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months living expenses. That to me is an emergency fund. So figure out how you can save and get that emergency fund. Build up your emergency fund. Number 9 is cut those unnecessary expenses. I talked about this when I went through my personal expenses. I found things that we were subscribed to that I didn't even know I was subscribed to. Cut those out. Figure out how you can lower down to just your bare necessities. And then as you get a grip on that, you can slowly add more luxurious things back into your budget. And my last tip for you is something I'm doing on this channel, which is review every month. So here are the questions I'm asking myself at the end of every month and before I open up my next month. And I highly recommend you ask yourself these questions as well, because our goals change, our motives change. We can adjust things and tweak things. And we should always be reviewing all of this to make sure that it is still in alignment with our overall family, our goals, type of people we want to be. Where we spend our money says a lot about who we are. Here are some things you can ask yourself, especially when you're just getting started. What was hard about this month and what was helpful? What can I do better? And what did I do really well? Am I happy with my results in my saving categories, or what can I change to do better? What helped me succeed the most this month? All right, so those are just a few of the questions that I personally review on my channel with you guys at the end and close out of each month. So I highly recommend that you do the same. Now, those are 10 things just to get your feet in the water, get thinking, get motivated, get in your income, your expenses, figure out where your money's at. There are so many other steps to the cash budgeting system that I would love to share with you, but we would literally be here all day. Some things that I have found really useful are my binders, somewhere to put my change, having a good calculator, having a good binder to put all of your printables in, making sure that you have a wallet that is functional for cash. It's a little bit more challenging if you don't have your cash divvied up into envelopes when you're out and about. That can just make it a little bit more muddy and confusing. So having places that are organized to keep your money and your transactions is really going to help you, in my opinion, be successful. Well, I would love to hear down below what some of your beginner tips are for cash budgeting. I hope that you were able to follow this video. I am definitely passionate about trying to help people. I know when I was getting started, I was looking for videos like this, just where somebody could walk me through their process and kind of how they got started. And to be honest with you, that's basically what my whole channel is. I am not an expert by any means, but I am figuring this out as I go. And this community has been so helpful and so insightful. I really cannot thank you guys enough for taking time to watch this video, subscribing and liking. It's really encouraging to me as I start this journey with our family and our budget. Well, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.